Hello friends, let's resume our discussion on creep. So in the part 1 of the lecture, we saw that the creep or the anelastic behavior is observed in the elastic region as well, and we saw the reason for such anelastic behavior is because the polycrystalline material generally comprises of grains and grain boundaries. The atomic arrangement in grains is significantly different from that of the grain boundaries, and because of these atomic arrangements, at high temperature for a given loading condition, the response of the material will also vary. Particularly at high temperature, the grain boundaries becomes more viscous, and that is the reason for the anelastic behavior. Even though the material resumes to its original state, there is a significant duration that the material takes to resume to its original state, and this is because of the viscous behavior of the grain boundaries. Now there was a previous question, how a single crystal would respond to such a condition. Will there be an anelastic behavior exhibited by the single crystal? To add to that, let me pose another question. This should be assignment question, maybe they will be, I don't know. So another question that you can think about is, supposing I have two crystal or two polycrystalline materials and the grain sizes of these materials are different, then which one would exhibit more of a anelastic behavior at high temperature? So you have two polycrystalline material, average grain size of these materials are significantly different. One is higher and one is lower. Which of these two material would exhibit a higher degree of anelastic behavior? So these are some questions that maybe you are interested in looking into, or someone might pose. But this has a very good relevance, and we will look into it in the subsequent lectures. This has a very good relevance to the creep behavior. Okay, so let us now get back to creep. So far what we are doing is we are studying creep at the elastic region. Now let's go back to the holistic definition of the creep, and let's look into how we will approach to study this creep, or what is the approach that we will be taking to understand creep behavior. So in the previous lecture, or not the part 1 but the one before that, we saw that there is a specific reason why we want to study creep behavior at high temperature. So one was the reason for studying creep. The first reason was that at high temperature, time becomes a critical factor in determining how a material would behave. At high temperature, the behavior of a material significantly depends on the duration for which you are imposing that load. So that is one of the reasons. And since time dependent behavior is the typical definition or the precise definition of creep, we want to study the creep behavior of the material. Now the other reason we saw is that it is very much relevant to the applications, which is very much relevant to the high temperature applications, because at high temperature, even though the load might vary, the change in the load is not very much drastic. However, the duration for which the load is acting, it's quite long, and since at high temperature the time plays a vital role, then the creep study is very much relevant to the for the high temperature application. So at high temperature or in the application, even though there is a change in load, it is not much, but the duration plays a critical role, and one behavior wherein wherein the time is also a critical component is the creep behavior, and that is the reason why we relate creep to the high temperature applications, or why we choose creep testing for understanding the behavior of high temperature materials. The key point is here, creep is a time dependent study, and at high temperature or in the high temperature application, it is the time that determines how your material behave or how your material deforms. So given the similarity, we use creep test to understand the behavior of materials at high temperature. To ensure that you are using right material for high temperature, we use creep. Now supposing, or if you could recollect our discussion at the early stages of this particular course, wherein we talked about why one should consider high temperature materials. There, if you could recollect, there was a plot wherein for different application, the life of the components involved in different high temperature applications was shown in the y-axis. If you could recollect, each of these segments in the y-axis, they were in terms of like 10, 10 square, 10 cube, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason why I remember that vividly is because I remember asking you this question: what is the nature for this, or why do we have an equal interval between these 2 points which do not have equal difference between them? So the difference here is 90, the difference here is 990, or 1000 and minus 100, so it is close to 900, and here it is 90. But even though there is a significant difference, or there is at least 10 times the difference is higher, but we see the same interval. And I asked you this question, I don't know how many, I guess many of you already know that, but if you're not, I guess you would have known by now what is the reason for it. Now, this is the reason why I remember having shown you such a plot. And if you could recollect, at the top side, or the top, if it is available online, you can always have a look at it. The higher end of this axis was somewhere around 10 to the power 9 seconds. So this was at the higher end of this plot. So that means the material will withstand a given load for a duration of 10 to the power 9 seconds. So if you translate this seconds to days, it will come close to, when you translate the seconds to days, from days to, I don't know, weeks, from weeks to months, and months to year, and years to decade, this will come close to 3 decades or 30 years. So there are high temperature materials, the life of there are materials and their lives are sometimes as huge as 30 years or close to 3 decades. Now, if you want to study the creep behavior of the material till it fails, if you want to do that, if you want to study the behavior of a material, if you want to impose similar load that it experiences in the application, and if you want to give the similar temperature or impose or expose it to the similar temperature that it experiences at the application, and if you want to see at what point it ruptures, then you would have to wait for 30 decades for one sample to rupture and to give a quantitative data. Now this is not practical, because given just when you focus on the time alone, this is not practical. One do not want to study one material for that much amount of time. Therefore, even though we chose the creep test because of this relevance to the high temperature material and also the theoretical relevance of the influence of time on the behavior of the material, we cannot impose a condition that is very similar to that of the application. We cannot use a condition that we cannot create a condition that mimics exactly that of the application, because that means that you have to then wait for such decades long, you have to wait for so many or this many years just for one experiment to complete. So that means we have to take a different approach to study and analyze creep. Let me repeat, even though we chose creep experiment or creep study because it was theoretically, it was consistent. We want to study time, influence of time on the behavior, so theoretically it was consistent, and it was also practically relevant because that was the condition that the material was experiencing at the high temperature applications. Even though we have these factors, we cannot impose the exact condition that material experiences at the application to the creep test. If we do that, then it becomes non-pragmatic. It is not at all practical, and we cannot wait so long for the material to fail and to study it. So the approach we take is something different. What we do is we build based on we create a setup or we create an environment that is more practical. So for the creep study, we create an environment that is more practical, meaning we adjust the temperature in such a way that, and we also adjust the load in such a way that it is more practical to us. We are able to finish the experiment in a given practical amount of time. The thing is, by focusing more on the practical aspect of the experiment, we do not want to negotiate, or we do not want to create an environment that is totally irrelevant to that of the application. So what we do is we try to arrive at a balance between practical and also the relevance. So we need to have a setup that is practical for us to study. Say for instance, I have seen experiments which for creep which goes on for at least a week or so. So that is something that is practical. When you compare it to 3 decades, a week or so is something that is practical. For at least for some computation guys, it is totally absurd to think about experiment going on for weeks. But yeah, so we have seen creep researchers that for one day the mission is occupied for a week and it works on just one material. So that is something practical. And we also have to be relevant. So just because we don't want a machine operating for 1 week, you want to have a setup just the machine it will operate for few years. You will create an environment, or few hours you create an environment that the machine or the temperature, and you adjust the load and temperature in such a way that the machine would cause the failure of the material for just in few hours. Then what would ultimately happen is we won't be able to relate that environment to the application. So ultimately what we would do is, when you set up the creep experiment, you want to achieve a balance between the application and the practicality of your experiments. So we need to achieve a balance, and that is how you create the environment. So when I talk about environment, it is the combination of temperature and load. So you choose your temperature and load in such a way that you have some relevance to the application and it is also practical. Then to that, what you would do is you would study this result for the practical condition that you have imposed that is relevant to the application. You achieve a result, and this result you will study based on the theoretical understanding that you have developed based on this result. So you have some results, and based on that you would have developed some, or you would have gained some theoretical understanding. Using that theoretical understanding, and in addition to several understanding that you have gained from other literature, that is existing understanding. So you have two theoretical understanding, one that you have gained from the experiment, and there is other understanding that is already existent. So you have existing understanding and the gained understanding. So using these theoretical understanding, you will study the practical experiment that you have carried out. So you have theoretical understanding both gained and existing. You have carried out a practical experiment. You study these results with this understanding. Then what you would do is, you have your practical experiments, you have your theoretical understanding both existing and gained. So gained is something that you have gained through the present experience. You have these. So in combining this experiment and in combining with your theoretical understanding, you then extrapolate the result. You then extrapolate the existing result to the exact practical or exact application condition. And then you would say, you would predict, okay, we have studied this, we have this theoretical understanding, we have considered this condition, we have considered this environment, we have this theoretical understanding. So combining this, we can predict at what period or what would be the life of this material for this application. So this is how you would approach the creep study. So you would not conduct a creep study exactly for under the application condition, because that won't be practical. At the same time, for the sake of practicality, you will not totally compromise the application condition. So you would approach a balance, and you would study the material under this practical condition, a balanced practical condition. And now you would interpret this result by using the theoretical understanding that you have gained from the experiments and also the existing theoretical understanding. And having done that, you would extrapolate these results and you would predict how the material would behave at the application or in the application, or what would be the life of the material. Now this approach is called as phenomenological approach. So this approach is referred to as the phenomenological approach. And when you talk about creep, in most books that are exclusively deals with creep, they begin with this title, phenomenology of creep, meaning you are not doing some experiment that reflect the application condition alone. You are doing an experiment which has equal, or wherein the theoretical understanding plays an equal importance. And this experiment, you have to relate it to the theoretical understanding in order to give a useful result. And that approach is called as phenomenological approach. This is quite a mouthful of a word, I know. Maybe I would even slip a few times if I talk about this for a quite long for some time. Then maybe it is better for me to stop at this here. I just wanted to expose you to this term, because this might be something that when you want to study creep exclusively either for your research or for your work, you would come across this term, and what that means is that you are not doing just experiments alone and just taking the results and using it in the application. No, you are not doing that. You are in principle verifying your theoretical understanding through the gained approach, and you are imposing that understanding in order to extrapolate and give a prediction. And this is what sometimes is referred to as the phenomenological approach or the phenomenology of creep. So when you talk about creep, there is a unique way to approach it, and that way is what we have seen here. Now, we have already defined that creep is it studies the time dependent behavior, and so far we have not plotted any graphs for creep behavior. We have not seen how a material would behave, or plastically behave at least, when you impose a load that would cause such a plastic deformation. We have not seen anything like that. We have not plotted any plot for creep. All we have done is we have introduced the need for studying the creep behavior. We have seen what approach should we have to take to understand the creep behavior. However, we have seen creep-like behavior in the elastic region, and we have plotted something for that condition. We have when you want to plot the anelastic behavior of a material which is dependent on time, we saw that in order to plot that, we need to have a definite x on the y-axis. In the x-axis we had time, and in the x-axis we had elastic strain. So we saw that when you want to study a time dependent elastic behavior, then time should be one of the components, and that would assume the x-axis, and the strain, which is the reflection or the macroscopic change that occurs in the material with increasing the duration of time, that we have plotted on the y-axis. Now this becomes then the framework for understanding creep, meaning this setup here, the components that occupy x and y-axis, they give us a framework for understanding creep. So when you want to study creep, when you want to plot creep, a behavior of a material or a creep behavior of a material, if you want to represent it graphically, then it would assume a form similar to that of the analysis and elasticity, which we have seen in the part 1 of the lecture and in the previous lectures as well. So meaning we would have a definite framework with y-axis representing the strain and the x-axis representing the time. However, in anelastic behavior, we focus just on elastic strain. In case of the creep, since it will also include the plastic behavior, we just consider the strain, the overall strain in this y-axis. So there will not be an exclusive elastic treatment in the creep, but in the anelastic there will be an exclusive treatment for elasticity. But in case of creep, there will be the overall consideration or total consideration of the strain. It will not be confined to the elastic behavior or the elasticity of the material. So this is the framework one would adapt in general case for representing the or graphically plotting the creep behavior. Now we have defined two components of the mechanical condition. So supposing, if you could recollect what you have seen in the your sophomore classes, or in your in your second or third year, wherein you would have talked about the mechanical condition in case of stress and strain. So it would represent the curve, or the graphical representation of it would be something like this. It would have the stress component here and the strain component here. You would understand the mechanical behavior in terms of how the material would expand or it would contract if you impose a given amount of stress. So that is how you would understand a general mechanical behavior of the material. So the reason why I would want to introduce or want you to recollect that is because when you talk about the mechanical condition, you cannot just have one component, that is strain alone, because the strain, even though we are talking about creep, even though we are talking about high temperature behavior, the strain will ultimately depend on the stress or the load that we impose. So we cannot negotiate or we cannot get rid of the stress term in the creep behavior or the creep plot as well. So therefore, what we assume is this stress is constant. So there are two ways to do it. You can assume either the load is constant or the stress is constant. So whenever you see that the stress is or the creep behavior is represented graphically, and it is represented by virtue of strain and time, it doesn't mean that we have just compromised or just overlooked the contribution of the other mechanical component, that is stress. We have not done that, we have assumed that to be constant. So whenever you see a creep behavior representation, a graphical plot for creep behavior, it is implicit that the stress is assumed to be constant or the load is assumed to be constant. So one has to be very sure that which is assumed to be constant, because there is a difference between assuming a load to be constant and assuming a stress to be constant. So when you assume a load, there is a restriction, and when you assume just a stress, there is also a restriction. And when you assume a particular form of the stress, then you have an ideal representation of creep. So maybe this we will see in the, or this would be the starting point of the next lecture. So we will see ourselves in the next lecture, wherein we will be discussing about the graphical representation of the creep behavior and how one can represent the creep behavior in an ideal manner without any restrictions. So let's see ourselves in the next lecture. And even though this is a two-part one, I have the time is rather, when you combine these two, it falls within your allotted duration. So please listen to it to your convenience and let me know if you have any questions. So thanks for your time. I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.